right, well, we're going to go ahead and get started, and hopefully some other people will be joining us. I know a couple of people aren't going to be able to. We all understand the various conflicts of travel and teaching, but we're excited to have you guys here. This session we're going to be.
I don't recognize Karen. Who's that?
Oh. I don't know if she heard you. Karen, who was that? I don't think she can hear us yet, Suzanne.
Sorry, I just heard a huge crash and a glass broke downstairs at my house. So anyway, all good. All good.
All right. I don't think Karen can hear us yet. I think she's getting technical help from the younger generation.
Technical assistance going on. Yep.
That's good. So we're going to look at unpacking exemplary tasks this session and looking at how to use the coaching for impact resources that we have in our LDC library. And thinking about those exemplary tasks, you know, we're trying to incorporate a tip in, and one of the resources that's available in LDC that really was eye-opening for me when it was first introduced is the Barry Olson article about academic writing across the disciplines. And we want to think about how our standards-driven tasks are grounded in the thinking of the discipline. And this article really helps frame that thinking and helped me think about discipline-specific writing. And I'm going to share my screen and show you guys the paragraph that really jumped out at me in this article. And it's a sample of MLA, APA, and IEEE, how those are each, how the citations work. And when Suzanne and Barb shared this with me many, many moons ago, this light bulb went off that dates are really important in the sciences, but not so much in ELA. And the author is significant in an ELA. And then in the IEE, which for those that aren't, it's the Institutional Electrical and Electronic Engineers. For them, it's the data that really drives them. And so that explains the differences. And this article goes through those kinds of pieces and really helps understand how disciplines are grounded in different important touch points. And that when we're developing our LDC tasks, it's really important to think about what is the grounding touch point for our discipline. And so as you design your task, one of the decision points you're going to be making is kind of what writing product the students are going to be creating. And there's this great document embedded in that article, but also separately. And I think Suzanne's going to put that in the chat, the link to this. But it really talks about the types of assignments for each of the different disciplines. And like with English, you know, are you asking your students to write an essay, or are you really asking them to write a literary analysis? What is your rhetorical purpose behind the writing you're having them do? And so there's this list of various ones for English and the traits involved. It also links it to the LDC task template. Which template would work best? So as you're looking at your task templates, you can think about which assignment drives it. And I know when I was in, there's 2 pages of English ones, and then there's this history one. And when I was writing my the social studies module I'm working on, I jumped on this historiographical essay because I was really asking kids to analyze how the historians looked at a particular event. I kept saying essay, but it's a specific kind of essay. And so this document really drives that type of thinking. So as you're revising, you know, and looking at if you've got your sciences, well, what are authentic writing pieces within the sciences? You have the lab reports, you have the post, you know, a poster is a legitimate document in science because you frequently have those big posters on the wall in medical labs everywhere. You know, what are you asking your kids to work on? And then it continues with engineering, which I love. I love looking at the engineering ones, and business, you know, a cover letter, a memo, proposals. PowerPoint presentation, so it gives you particularly solid writing prompts, writing pieces for you to use as you're thinking through, and it goes through psychology. Anyway, that's a document that I think you could find and really work with as you're revising your task, thinking about the purpose and goals. How is that interacting with your content? How is the content interacting with the text? And how is that all connecting with your reading focus standards? So as you consider that product, use the chart to think about your goals and your purpose and how you're going to decide on the appropriate product for your kids to be able to communicate, or your students to be able to communicate that understanding. The next, and so that's just a real great place to go when you're looking for those kinds of pieces. As we move forward, you're thinking about how the purpose of your task, how you're incorporating those writing standards. We're going to look at what a high quality task really looks like. And we're going to use the curriculum alignment rubric. We call it the CAR. And Suzanne, will you link that? Give them the link.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the goals of the course, this particular course, Blended Foundations, is that you leave with a rated high quality LDC task. So that for your own professional story, but also for your standing in the field. And this is the rubric we will use to rate those documents, you know? And so you're going to begin working on your task, or you've already started on your task. And before you dig too deeply into that, we wanted to give you some time to look at those high quality examples using the lens of this rubric. Purpose is twofold. So you enter with a strong example in mind as an inspiration, but also so that you enter the design process with some familiarity of that rubric criteria. We're going to do a brief touch of this CAR around session 6, but we thought it's kind of important for you guys to see and have some exposure to it. So this would be kind of like our rubric analysis mini task if Blended Foundations were a module. What we're going to do now is move into 2 breakout groups. Right here in Zoom, so we have 2 different groups. And one of you is going to work with Suzanne, one will be with me. Once you're in the breakout group, we're going to select 2 modules to unpack together from a collection called Strong Tasks to Analyze. All the tasks in the collection have either good to go or exemplary ratings. And so for this activity, you're going to need 2 things open: core tools to the strong task analysis. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and then I'm going to put that link in the, unless Suzanne beat me to it. You beat me to it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So open up that strong task analysis, and also a copy of the rubric. And Suzanne's listed both of those in there. So let's give you guys a minute to get those opened up. And then we will break out into our breakout groups. And Suzanne now move each of the groups forward.
So the 2 links are in the chat, and if you haven't used breakout groups in Zoom, it's really easy. What's going to happen is I'm going to click a button here, and basically you'll get a pop-up on your screen that says go to the breakout room, and once you click that, then you'll be just in a smaller group, and we'll have 2 groups, a little bit smaller, so that we can talk a little bit more easily with a smaller group. So is everybody ready? You got your 2 links open? Thumbs up, show me your thumbs.
No, I don't have mine open, Suzanne, I'm sorry.
Okay, so the rubric is helpful, and then that collection is where we'll actually look at the tasks. So those are the 2 main ones. So let me know.
I can't do anything with my screen. Oh, wait a minute.
It's in the chat. Do you see it in the chat?
I think so.
And once we get into our rooms, if you still don't have it, we'll be able to help you pull it up. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and move us into rooms. So click on once you get the link, click on that, and we'll see you in the breakout rooms. So I'm really curious about what you guys talked about in the other group. So I don't know, can someone share sort of your conversation or what the gist was?
Well, I like the comment, I don't know who made it, but the idea of lifting the language of the standards to include in the task.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that's a nice strategy to use.
Other things you noticed in those tasks?
I noticed the text alignment with the task, how well the text worked with the task itself. It was a very good choice. Worked well with the content, worked well with the standard, the focus standards worked well with the task.
All right, how about our group?
Some of that alignment wasn't as present, so parts of the focus standards didn't show up in the task, and parts of the task didn't show up in the standard.
Interesting. Which ones we looked at 2 ELA tasks. So what did you guys look at?
We looked at 3 science tasks.
Oh, y'all overachieved.
Amanda and Angie, well, Amanda's reaction, say what your reaction was when you first looked at the task.
Muted.
It was engaging.
Yeah.
The squirmy science one.
Yeah. It
I
looks
like that one.
fun. It looked like fun.
Yeah, fun.
It seemed like a big deal. So Angie, what did you decide after looking at that task?
I was excited that the students weren't writing a plain old essay again.
We also noticed that in the science standard or the science tasks, there was a lot more than writing and reading. There was a building a prototype.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is why one of the things that's really important and often gets overlooked in LDC task is the product, which is why we started off by showing you that chart, right? I mean, product really drives a task, and the combination of, if you want to get super clinical, right? It's like the input and the output in a task, right? If the text and the interaction is what kids do, and then the product is the way that they communicate and synthesize their knowledge and learnings, then that actually indicates a certain organizational thinking structure, right? The type of product indicates that. So it's really interesting, important to think about products. And as Angie said, it gets really boring if you're a kid to write a million essays over and over and over again. First of all, essays don't mean anything anymore, right? It doesn't mean anything. And secondly, it's super boring, just super boring. It's also one of the ways to get to guaranteed curriculum, which is in what way are you guaranteeing certain outcomes for kids? Like I was at back to school night this week, and the chemistry, my daughter's in 10th grade, she's taking chemistry, and the chemistry teacher said, we do we do labs and blah, 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 and every quarter, every kid writes a formal lab report. Okay, so that's like a guarantee that my kid is gonna write 4 lab reports this year, right? Formal lab reports with all of the sections and the structures, and I know that. So what about in English? Well, I already know that too. It's gonna be a research literary analysis paper, right? It's gonna be, and I know what it's gonna be. I know it now for social studies too, because I was at back to school night and I was told like, these are the products. So in our work, like what are the schools we work with guaranteeing their students will produce as a result of their education with us? It's kind of a big question. Like, and so that little blank, that tiny little blank becomes this big conceptual philosophical question. Anyway, we can talk about that forever.
What it is, at least you know what the products your kids are going to make. That's good. It's good that you know the product.
Right. So I'm going to go back to Nephi again, because Nephi loves it when I bring up his coding task, but so it's like a super important and question, right? In terms of computer science, are kids getting computer science in schools? What type of products should they be thinking about in computer science, right? Like I learned to program BASIC. That didn't help me very much, but are there ways that we interact around computers and technology that are critical for some sort of type of universal experience out in the world? Anyway.
Yeah, I would argue that breaking down any task in individual pieces is what the real benefit of teaching coding is to kids.
And to be honest, that's like a universal skill, right? Not related just to coding. That's a skill related to lots of things.
Before I was a teacher, I was a software engineer, and I have to agree with it very much that it teaches kids to break down things into their very, very to take a big problem and break it down into small problems. And all kids should take some of it.
Yeah.
It's a tremendous life skill.
And in fact, probably the skill of most of our disciplines. If you couldn't hear her, she was, Karen said she was a computer engineer, right? Is that what you said? And that skill of breaking down large pieces of information or concepts into smaller patterns, I suppose, is an important life skill. All right, so there's a few other things I want to talk about tonight, and then we're really going to get into tasks and spend the next couple sessions working on tasks. I hope you've written your tasks. I know that I've been really excited because I've been copied on some people's tasks. They are starting to come. Amanda, I saw Lori's, I saw yours come today, so that was really fun. And we're going to spend a lot of time talking about the tasks that we're all working on. I'm working on one too, and I think we're all working on tasks. So for the end of this session though, I also want to focus on two things. So in our online courses that you've been using to support, they're intended to support the workflow, right? So you use session 4 this time and 5 to really help you move along in the workflow of developing your task. That was kind of the point. The thing I want to point out though is that you are also not just learners in this work, but also leaders of this work in other contexts. And there's a whole other set of information in here that supports a different layer of the workflow, and that's the coach's workflow. So in the way that the courses are set up, we have this central column here, right? And we have the right-hand column here. The central column here is where you've been working, right? You picked your, you set up your module and linked it. You decided on your focus standards and edited those or added those, selected those. You picked your template, all of those kinds of things while you were doing your workflow. On the right-hand side is a whole set of stuff for you if you were using this content to support teachers in their workflow that might help you as a coach or a leader in a system. So I'm going to close my status bar up here because sometimes it can make it hard to read the column. So the way this is organized is around several key concepts for coaches or leaders of the work. The first is active facilitation, right? How do you virtually facilitate actively so that everybody's not like just sitting there, right? So we've already tried several things, breakout groups, partner chats, like all of those kinds of things to create some more active engagement. So there's guidance around here around active facilitation, core tools tips, sort of how to use core tools to do the work you're interested in. So here it's about group management. Responsive coaching, which is another dimension of being a coach. So how do you respond to individuals in your session, in your work? So every teacher sort of gets some response, and what does that look like? And then we have this section at the end of every one of the sessions called Coaching for Impact. So this is what I want to point out to you. When you're working with other folks, one of the things that you're always thinking about is, how do I figure out what's going on with my cohorts? How do I figure out what's going on? How do I target my feedback so I'm giving feedback on the highest leverage items for this place in their workflow, if that makes sense. So the people in this session are picking focus standards and picking templates. We're not going to give them feedback on their skills list. We're not going to give them feedback on anything else. We're going to give them feedback on that, just that, because that's what they're working on, right? So one of the resources you have here at your fingertips is this Coaching for Impact stuff, and it can help you figure out how to give that feedback. And so it tells you to what to look at in your data. So if you're a coach using this system, you would have data reports to look at, and you could see what kinds of work people are doing as they write their modules and do their work. So it kind of explains what you would look for and see in your reports. And then it gives you kind of some guidance around how to give the feedback. And this pop-out, let me go back so I can show you where that was. It says common participant patterns and sample coaches are here, and that here is a pop-out. And that takes you to this page, which is feedback you can give to people based on what you're seeing in their work, okay? So if they've linked their modules, here's a nice little stem you can cut and paste, right? They haven't linked their modules, here's a nice little stem you can cut and paste. If their focus standards are working nicely, here's a little stem. Again, if there aren't enough focus standards, they haven't remembered to put all their focus standards in. Anyway, you get the idea. If R1 or R10 are selected as the focus standards, then here's a little comment you can give. So I wanted to point out that you have this resource available for you as a coach. So when you're working with teachers or you're working with principals or whoever you're working with, you can have that kind of at your fingertips. So I'll stop there and see if are there any questions about that, or how to find that stuff, or what it's for, or anything?
It's helpful.
It's supposed to be.
Yeah.
It's not always. Sometimes it's too much. Sometimes it's overwhelming.
And it's really time saving when you have a lot of modules to go through, and you're wanting to just quickly, especially I work with I3 schools, and I do a lot of virtual work, and they may throw 20 modules at me in 1 week that I want to respond to, and I want to be thoughtful about my responses. So having this document to be able to pull and then, fine tune them as I go through it has been really helpful.
Mm-hmm. So the other thing that you have is these reports, and I don't know how many of you have these reports, so I'm just going to show sort of a, am I going to show? I don't think I have the right reports to show here. I don't have the right report. Let me see. So this is just a summary card if you are working with a group of people. So you can see kind of what you've done as a coach. So if your teachers have done, it's not a great sample, but if your teachers have been working on their modules here, for example, you can see when they've earned badges. You can see when they've posted student work. You can see when you've given feedback. If I were the coach in this school, I would be very sad that the last time I gave feedback was in January, because it really meant that I wasn't doing my job very well. But it can kind of help you figure out, who to talk to and what kind of feedback you might want to give and that kind of thing. So anyway, the point is that we've really tried to build in both layers in the content here, so that you have the coach layer, and then you also have the layer of the learner work for people who are doing this as learners. All right, so another resource that I want to share, and Moni, can you put it in the chat? I've messed up my tabs now. Here we go. Is another resource around coaching. So here are some coaching questions that you can ask people as they work along in their workflows. And it's organized around sort of the central choices that are made when you make a task. So when you choose, you have to choose focus standard, choose template, and it just gives you some sort of coaching questions that you can use to sort of help people and guide people along. So this is a document that you might want to also have at your fingertips if you're doing this kind of work and helping other people and helping each other, even if you're working with a partner. And you want to have the kind of questions to ask that pushes people's thinking or maybe kind of clarifying or whatever that is. So you'll notice, I hope you'll recognize, these are all the blanks of a template, basically. And you match that design star with the template choices. So it's another resource for you to use. Any questions about that or any comments? All right, well, keep it around. Okay, so that's, as we move forward, you're going to spend most of your time doing your own work and your task, but after this week, we are going to have some pairs and try to have some conversations between you. So these are resources you could use in those conversations as you work on building a task. Okay, so here's what's going to happen next week and the week after, and I want to kind of share the process. We're going to do something called task workshopping, where basically we're going to look at individual tasks and we're going to follow this protocol and basically workshop the task, which means using the rubric, walk through the task to see if all the pieces in that task are lining up. It's super fun. It's one of my favorite things to do. And we're going to do it in next week and the week after. And our goal is that you all have a chance to have your task workshopped, because that's really a great step on your way to completing it. And then, of course, making sure that it matches the rubric. So what we do is basically the author of the task is obviously you're here, and we show the task, and then we're going to walk through each piece of the task and think together about how all those pieces work. So in order to do that, you need to sign up to have your task workshopped. So here is the sign-up sheet.
And I linked it in the chat, and it will be not next week, but week after next. So weeks.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's not week.
That's fine.
I said that wrong.
We're going to model it next week, so you'll see kind of how it works.
Good.
So yeah, so think about whether the 12th or the 19th would work better for you. What we are going to do is be in smaller breakout groups for task workshopping, and then that way everyone will have a chance to participate as a critical friend and also as the author. If you don't know exactly which date will work for you best right now, you can do this in the next couple days, but we do want you to pick a time slot.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we will have the collection up and running. Make sure that you share your task with me and Suzanne as Can Edit. And as we get those in, we'll be adding them to the collection, and then you'll be able to access that collection and edit and look at everybody's task before we before we get online, so you can read over it.
Really,
If you're
yeah,
like me,
it's
you
helpful.
need to look at it a little bit.
Yeah, it's helpful to look at them beforehand. So we'll make sure that you have access to people's tasks. So basically what Monique is saying is this collection here, LDC Blended Foundations, we're going to put all of them in this collection. And so that way we all have them all in one place and you can find them more easily. Okay. Bill, did you have a question about that?
No, I was just muttering to myself that I got to look on my calendar for either the 12th or the 19th.
Yeah, see what works better.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so the final thing is what you're going to be working on this week is taking your task and running it through kind of a review process. We call it pitfalls. Some of you who've been around the LDC land are familiar with the term pitfalls. What we see is that there are really sort of common, talk about pattern analysis. There are really common patterns in kind of ways tasks become misaligned. And so we call that, we have a pitfall checklist and we have sort of common pitfalls that tasks fall in. So in session 6, basically you'll walk through basically analyzing your task to see if it contains any one of these 9 task pitfalls. This is really fun to do. It's way more fun to do with someone else rather than by yourself. So we're going to ask you to do that with a partner from this group. Is to have a conversation with each other about, it can happen in 2 ways. One is you can do a pitfall review on your own task and talk about that. Or the other way is you could trade your tasks and try to use the pitfalls on each other's tasks to see how that goes. So that is going to require a little bit of logistics in what I know are very complicated lives. So I'm going to go back to the chat here, and what we'll do is we'll send out a partner list so you can get in touch with each other to set up really maybe a half an hour, 20 minutes, half an hour conversation about your tasks. If you haven't used Zoom before, you can use Zoom for this. It's free. You can set up your own meeting. You have 40 minutes of time, so that's way more than you'll need because 40 minutes is a long time. You have a Zoom account, and the way to do that in your Zoom account is just to, in the login page, when you open it, it'll say set up a meeting, and you can just send that to whoever your partner is. But we think it's a fun opportunity to talk through tasks before we meet again to actually dive into everybody's individual tasks. So why don't we take a minute, and in the chat, let's first write down questions and wonderings. I've just given you a lot of information, basically dumped it on you. So what are your questions or wonderings around what I just shared? So Amanda, what we're gonna do is we're gonna do task workshopping first. So everybody has a chance to have it workshopped, and then it will come in for more personal feedback from one of us. Because our goal is that you leave blended with a rated task. Definitely our goal. Oh, you're starting next week? Do you want someone to look at it before then? Okay, we can do that.
Yeah.
Did you shared it with me already? Okay, so we'll do that. Is anyone else going to be teaching their task really soon?
And Deborah, I'm going to go in tomorrow and add all the tasks that I've received to the collection and make sure they're all in there. So if you've sent me your task and you don't see it by, say, noon Eastern tomorrow in the collection, please let me know. And then we'll figure out what's going on. I know one was shared that with Ken comment and I couldn't fix that. And so I just shot an email to that person and said, hey, can you change it to Ken Edit? And now that one's in there. So, the collection.
It's going to be Blended Foundations Fall 2017, but in the follow-up email, we'll send the link, and also it's in the syllabus. So you can find the link there as well. You'll find it in your shared with me tab, probably under your library. Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's time to go. It goes fast. It's never enough. It's just never enough. Okay, so as our final moment, aside from the wonderings and questions, thinking about tasks, thinking about coaching resources, thinking about products, because that's what we started off with. What is your phrase or word for today? What will you leave here thinking about? All right, everybody.
Thanks, guys. I love seeing these comments at the end. I get wrapped up in reading them and forget to say anything or write anything myself frequently.
Yes. All right. Well, good night. Yes, have fun working with your partner and look forward to hearing about that. And we'll be following up with all of the links in one place, Bill, so that you can get to it from there.